Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. This video is about Chiron in Pisces and Chiron in the 12th house. It's the last one in the Chiron series, so this has taken a while. And of course, what better way to end than with the energy of Pisces, the 12th house, the last sign, the completion of the cycle, which always starts anew. So with Chiron, I have a video in the description that goes much more over this Chiron energy in depth and what it means, but essentially it represents the wounded healer, where we are experiencing some form of pain, some form of vulnerability that is very deep, very painful, hard to heal, but through our understanding of this pain, we're able to connect with and heal other people. And it gives us a much deeper sense of purpose, because this is not just a singular placement within us. This is really bridging the material world and the ethereal world, the life on earth and life more as a soul with a purpose. And looking at your Chiron placement, if you have it in Pisces, this is going to be Chiron expressing itself through the energy, like a personality embodiment of Pisces energy. If you have it in the 12th house, this is going to be more relevant to the 12th house area of life, which is the hardest to explain. It's kind of vague by design, but I'm going to try my very best to get into and really channel this Neptune energy in a way that explains my personal understanding of it, and also the understanding through this book, Chiron, Rainbow Bridge Between the Inner and Outer Planets by Barbara Hand Clow, that I've really been looking at for this study on Chiron, and I highly recommend it. So before I get into it, I just want to mention I do offer personal natal chart readings and synastry readings, though if you're seeing this video right when it comes out, my shop is on a little bit of a vacation for a brief amount of time, but I will be back. So more information in the description if you're interested in that. But okay, let's get into this. This Chiron placement is deeply painful. It is really the nature of Pisces, the 12th house, and the ruler Neptune to kind of need that exploration in order to get to the point of understanding it. But the easiest way that I can sum up this particular placement is feeling a very deep connection, feeling that sense of purpose, and your understanding of the oneness and connection between everything and everyone in the universe. It's something that you understand on a deep level. However, this world does not affirm stuff like that to us. This world that we're living in needs material confirmation in order to understand things, in order to be able to prove that they exist. And if we're looking at the axis of Pisces and its opposite Virgo, or the 12th house and its opposite the 6th house, this axis is about the material world and what can be done tangibly, the present moment. And then this side of it, the ethereal world, what is intangible, what is felt, but not necessarily provable. So this is a deeply intuitive placement. This comes with a natural mysticism, a natural connection, but it can feel like you're very distanced from that connection, or like your circumstances, it makes it difficult to reach that. But this is absolutely a sign of being a mystic, being somebody who is able to see beyond the veil. So what can come with this placement is a very deep sense of sensitivity, and you could have such strong empathy or compassion that you get lost in other people's feelings, that you lose your own sense of self and kind of like unintentionally merge with others or pick up on things that aren't your own and then take them on. This can be a very, very self-sacrificial placement to have, one that is so bombarded and overwhelmed by all of the sensory things that you're picking up that it can feel extremely overwhelming. This can even lead to self-sabotage. Escapism behaviors are always huge with this sort of energy, because it can truly feel so overwhelming that it's like, what do I even do? And this can really create this sense of crisis when it comes to connecting to not just your own sense of intuition, but to that source energy, the oneness, the universe, whatever it is that you resonate with as far as the source of where we come from and the way that we're connected. That's a very personal relationship that you have with your own sense of spirituality. And your way needs to be trusted ultimately, because this can very much lead to wanting to know answers so badly, knowing that there is more and always searching for that, but maybe finding teachers who misguide you, or seeking this information outside of yourself when you truly are attached to those answers. You can get them from yourself, but it can seem so difficult to navigate this energy, because it is all about illusions and delusions and confusion. And this ultimately comes down to, I'm going to explain it this way. So the way that I understand Neptune, this particular understanding came to me just through, really focusing on the energy. And then in this book, the thing that she goes over when describing this energy, and Barbara Hand Clow herself has her Chiron in the 12th house. But I'm going to go over her explanation and then go over my understanding and show how they fit together, because I think her example is so much more clear. And that is her describing the first time that she ever really came across something that seemed like a clear example of Neptune stickiness, is what she calls it. And to describe this, in the film Fantastic Voyage, which I've never seen, and I don't know the context, but what she's describing is being inside lungs and these sticky reticular fibers that are actually protecting the lungs, screening out the smoke, the lungs of this heavy smoker. And the stickiness is only necessary because the smoke is present. Without the smoke, the fibers wouldn't need to exist, they wouldn't need to screen it, and then it would be all clear. And the way that this fits in with my understanding of Neptune, what I kind of understood is like Neptune is a protector. Obviously, this energy is protecting us because the nature of the 12th house is to have things be hidden from us, the things that we hide from ourselves. And the way that I see Neptune, like for example, if it's really early on in life, we don't have a complete understanding of the way that things work, we have people guiding us and we kind of have to listen to them because we don't know, we're young, we don't have enough experience to understand. Sometimes things happen that we just do not have enough of an understanding to process, and they can be very traumatic or very upsetting or something that really sticks with us. And Neptune kind of comes in these moments and it hides these memories or these feelings in our 12th house to protect us from them. However, they're still there. They are going to remain there until we actually find them. We have to search for them, and they do come up. These are like latent, repressed memories or feelings that will be triggered. However, they can be so subconscious and so ingrained that we might not even notice that this is not just like a personality quirk, it's actually a sign of early life trauma that we might not even remember at all. And that's why this energy can be so difficult, because it's like trying to search for something in the dark that you don't even know what it is. Like, what am I looking for? I know something is here, but what is it? So searching deep inside is so important here. But to take her example and my example, what this truly means is that Neptune protects, shielding and boundaries and things like that are very important when you find it difficult to keep your energy to yourself and, have other people's energy be to themselves. When you find it hard to create boundaries and to even know like where your feelings end and another person's begins, or where their suffering ends and what you should take on or shouldn't take on. These boundaries are necessary when we're navigating this energy early on. But boundaries don't just keep bad things out. They can also keep good things out. They can keep understanding out, and they can keep us safe from pain, but that pain stays inside. And this is also, Pluto is the last planet. It's kind of the last step of Chiron, is facing those things. Neptune is more about finding them and our relationship with them and the ways that they can arise, but always with that idea of protection from that sensitivity. But ultimately the answer to really breaking through this need for protection, the need for the stickiness to screen out the smoke. We need to get rid of the source issue, the smoke, the trauma, the thing that we're protecting ourselves from, that Neptune is protecting our early selves from, because these things keep us from truly resonating with our potential. And that resonating with our potential, this is a phrase that she used that I thought was absolutely wonderful, because when you think about those moments, like in meditation or just moments of clarity, when you can really connect to like that spiritual Neptune energy, and you feel like for just a moment everything is clear and it makes sense, and you know who you are, you feel like yourself, you are able to just be without any external things, without any qualifiers, without any thoughts, without even feeling your body, that sense of peace that comes with just purely being. That is resonating with your pure potential without all of the things that the Neptune stickiness needs to keep at bay or keep us protected from. So this is ultimately about facing those things and getting them out so that we have a clear and pure connection, because those are what block the connection. But fear of the unknown is huge here, because we don't necessarily know what these things are going to be. We don't know what we're gonna find. All we know is that they were scary enough to hide from us back then. But do consider, when you're younger, things are scarier because you don't understand them. But as an adult, you can always go back to those moments with compassion, self-compassion, and realize like where this even has a place within who you are. Because again, our subconscious processes can be so informed by trauma and by memories that we're not even conscious of. The 12th house is the subconscious. And Pisces operates through the subconscious senses, through sensing things that are not visible. But I mean, the balance of this, having such deep sensitivity in a world like this, where there is such cruelty, where people are not reciprocating that kindness that you feel so naturally attuned to, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. But what this placement indicates is that you are meant to be the sort of person who is guiding others spiritually, guiding others through their own understanding of themselves and through their own subconscious. But you need to get clear on your own first. You need to develop that relationship with Neptune, where you're no longer hiding things from yourself because you don't feel like you can handle them. You know that you can handle them. You know that you can handle anything, and you shouldn't necessarily have to, but this is life. And I truly believe that all of our experiences happen for a reason, and that we can always get something out of it, even through the greatest suffering. That is what Chiron is all about, taking our pain and our suffering and making it purposeful. Because a part of human life is that we kind of come here to suffer. That is honestly how our souls grow. We grow through contrast, and this world with our extremes and duality and opposites. And the way that we look at things, just society looks at things so much within this polarity of like good and evil, and really focusing on those extremes, to me, I consider it to be divisive. Not to say that if you strongly have a stance, that's pointless, because we have our strong feelings and the things that we align with for a purpose. And that's why looking at your 11th house and really identifying your place in society, what you associate yourself with, whether that's like communities, friends, higher aspirations, dealing with your 11th house and really identifying what it is that you want to work for on a higher level can help direct this energy so that we can process it in the 12th. But to quote the book again, no force in the universe is good or bad. It is only used well or poorly. This Neptune sense of acceptance, whether we agree or we disagree, to accept is how we get peace, because that goes back to the fear of the unknown. It goes back to being afraid that you won't be able to handle something, or feeling like you won't have the answers. A big part of this is trusting yourself, trusting your feelings as navigation and your intuition and guidance that you have. Your own spiritual connection ultimately should be coming from you. You shouldn't have to look outside of yourself. Of course, there are all sorts of helpful things, but never ever go with someone else's path. You need to be living your own path and being your own leader, especially when it comes to more purposeful things, because you are actually a guide in this. You don't need a guide, though it can feel like you do. Just take the experiences and learn from them, have your personal understanding and like what you can do with it, and continue on, because escapism is huge with this. This can be all sorts of things: substance abuse, falling into addiction, even sleeping too much, avoiding those things that feel important and meaningful. I understand this feeling of being overwhelmed. I completely do. That's why it takes so much strength to pull yourself out of this, but consider your connection to such deep purpose and what you're capable of. That's why it's so important to resonate with your potential, to clear those things that make you feel insecure or like a victim. That's another thing with this sort of energy, is there is often a tendency to victimize the self, to be more comfortable in that role of wanting people to recognize your pain and wanting them to help you, wanting them to see your suffering, which is completely valid. If you have suffered, it only makes sense as a human to want that to be seen and validated. But there's a time for that, and you can't stay in it forever. It's truly a disservice to yourself to stay in the victim mentality if that is something that you struggle with. And that's something to be really honest about. Everybody does it sometimes, though. Like, I mean, when you're hurting, and this can come with so much underlying unidentified pain, it can be so hard to even feel like you can prove it. It can feel like you need to prove it by remaining in that pain. It's like, I'm suffering. I don't necessarily know why it hurts so bad, but it does. I don't know why I've had to go through this, but I have. And I've lived in this pain for so long that it has become who I am, that I've started to resonate with the pain rather than with my true essence. And that's the point when you need to find a way to pull yourself out of it, because only you can. Nobody is truly going to be able to save you, because nobody can understand things the way that you do. Nobody has been through exactly what you have, and they don't truly know how it feels, which is upsetting. It's difficult, but it makes you all the more strong to push forward in spite of this. Because if we're being honest here, when you are resonating with that victimhood mentality, what it does is it attracts more circumstances that affirm that you were a victim. So shifting out of that, becoming a survivor, becoming someone who has been through difficult things but has overcome them, rather than someone who terrible things always happen to. When you're living in that mode of terrible things always happen to me, yeah, they do, and they will continue to, until you identify more with being someone who is able to connect with that pain, feel it, process it, release it, and learn from it. This is a completely necessary process, and it's how you get out of things. And then also the other way out is acceptance, radical acceptance of yourself, of your experiences, no matter how horrible they might have been or continue to be. I understand how difficult it can be when you're actively suffering to even consider shifting out of that. I understand, but I'm also telling you that you owe it to yourself to try, because if you don't try, you'll stay there. And of course, it's better to try and fail than to never try at all, but that acceptance is also the way through the pain that can come from oversensitivity, especially when it comes to like the cruelty of others, or seeing like the world is such a horrible place. Of course it can be, it absolutely can be, but it doesn't have to be, and focusing on that makes it more your reality. So putting your focus on things that make you feel better, things that make you feel more like yourself, that raise your vibration to any degree, is always better than sitting in suffering or complaining complaining or making excuses for why you can't change. I know that this sounds harsh. I know. Like, I don't like saying this, but it's the truth. And this is something that I've had to practice myself. Things that you identify with, issues, struggles that you identify with, as you continue to identify with them, they continue to be your reality. But if you can shift and overcome the influence that they have on you, the power that they have over you, it's your power. You give it that power, and your perspective can be so incredibly powerful when it comes to what you're experiencing. Even just a perspective shift. The perspective shift of going from negativity into neutrality. I'm not telling you have to like your suffering. Like, that would be horribly cruel for me to say. And I'm not saying that you have to like and embrace and welcome the cruelty of other people and the bad things in life. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's about neutrality. It's about going from, I don't like this is bothering me, this is a horrible thing that's happening to me, into, yes, this is happening. This is something that's happening. I'm going to focus on something else and do everything you can not to feed into that negative thing. Because the more you feed into it, the more power it has and the more presence it has within your reality. And you are meant to rise above that. Your connection is not here for you to suffer. It's not here for you to focus on those bad things within the world. It's here so that, looking at Chiron, he was immortal. He was wounded with an arrow that would have killed any mortal, but he was immortal. So he had this physical pain that he was suffering from continually, that he could not heal, but he also couldn't die to escape it. And through that suffering, he was able to understand the pain of mortals. So he was able to use his power as such a wise healer in a way that was so more compassionate and empathetic. He wasn't just going to be like, oh, you're suffering? Okay, well, here's what you do, while not having that perspective of what it feels like. He has that perspective. You have that perspective. You have the understanding of true suffering. And through that, your connection to those other people who are suffering is so much deeper because it's from personal experience. That's what this is all about. So just try to find a way to identify any negative patterns or negative assumptions, things that you're bothered by. Consider those things to be something that you are allowing and affirming, and stop allowing them, stop affirming them. And I understand that from a worldly perspective, this sounds completely impossible. It's like, I'm suffering. It has always been this way. How can I bypass that? I'm telling you, neutrality and acceptance is the first step, and then you find the way out and above it. And I also have to say, if you are believing that something is inescapable, that something can't be healed, that something is going to be there eternally, I can't tell you whether it's going to be or not, but this relationship with that concept of identifying with the pain so strongly, identifying with the suffering as a part of your experience so strongly that it keeps it there. There's no way to explain it that doesn't sound like I'm blaming you for your suffering. That's not what this is about. You didn't start it. You didn't ask for it, and that's the point. But you can get rid of it, or you can form a better relationship with it. One visualization technique that I think could help with forming a more neutral relationship with your suffering is to identify it and maybe personify it. Develop a dialogue with it. Have a conversation with this concept, this thing that you hate, this thing that you're feeding negative energy into. Ask it why it's here. Ask it why it's happening. Ask it what you're meant to learn from it. I know this is abstract, but this is what I would do. And I'm not trying to claim that you can heal all diseases, get rid of all pain. That's not what this is about, because even Chiron couldn't heal his wound. He ended up sacrificing himself in the end, but we are all mortal and our suffering will be over eventually. So I'm saying that your perspective is what is ultimately the most important thing here. Your relationship with your pain does not have to be a horrible battle every moment of your life. There is a strong theme of romanticizing pain when it comes to Pisces 12th house energy as well, and to identifying as somebody who suffers. So that identification is a choice. And by that I mean, say two people and they're both paralyzed from the neck down. Okay, one of them spends every day thinking, this is my life, this is horrible, I can't believe this happened to me, I hate it here. The other one takes that time to rest, to explore in their mind, to process things that have gone unprocessed, to use that Neptune sense of imagination, of creativity within the mind, to explore their inner brilliance. And that more positive way of going about it creates opportunities. It attracts people who are going to come there to help, and maybe they tell their story to someone who makes a book out of it. And I mean, they're just drastically different stories of two people who have experienced the same thing that I've completely made up. That's the best example that I can think of right now. And this is a really hard thing to talk about. And I know that, like, coming from me, obviously you don't know me, you don't know my life, but like, who wants to hear this from me? Just recognize, like, I mean, you don't know me, I don't know you. Nobody knows anyone like they know themselves. And that is, again, why you have to be the one to pull yourself out of whatever it is that you're suffering from. Whether it is something absolutely horrible and traumatic, or whether it is more something of your own creation, a confusion or delusion that you have formed within your own mind, your relationship with your connection. The light is inside you, and all external information is for learning purposes, for navigation purposes. But the key is in your perspective and in your way of harnessing this energy. Again, no force in the universe is good or bad. It is only used well or poorly. So whatever the world has dealt you, you can use it well or you can use it poorly. And this speaks to so much creativity, artistic outlet, divination, or like healing modalities like Reiki, like energetic healing. These things can be wonderful things to focus on because you do have so much healing energy. You're meant to be healing other people, but you have to get to that point where you are really harnessing that healing energy inside you. And of course, you need to be the one who's healed first, and you deserve that. You can be the teacher, you can be the master over these things. But one of the most constant things about life is the fluidity of it. Everything is always changing. Nothing is ever going to stay the same. And the more that we try to hold on to things or to control them or to find a way to keep them the way that makes us comfortable, we are only going to be met with more difficulty because, fluidity, it cycles. The zodiac is a cycle. Water is flowing. Can you hold it in place? Like, navigation within this placement can feel like everything is foggy or everything is dark, and each individual has their own map or goal or purpose. But looking within your natal chart is what can really help here. Looking at not just your 11th house, but also your 5th house. This axis is about the 5th house, our self-expression, our sense of individual specialness, what we have to offer as a person, and like really honing our creativity in a way that's very personal to us, very inspired. And on the other side of that, the 11th house is about the community and what's essentially like receiving our creativity, what we're able to put this into in order to make something greater out of it, in order to affect people on a much larger scale. So examining your 5th and 11th house axis, your sense of creativity and your sense of like a higher calling, and how you can have a greater outlet for that. That can be a wonderful tool in navigating this, because you have your talents and your skills and your abilities for a reason, and these natural, like, things that really we're passionate about. Things from the 5th house come from our heart, from our sense of self. They're things that we identify with personally, and those personal things are what help us to navigate the 11th house, our place in society, within a community. Passion, your heart. This is the greatest tool that you have for navigating, for seeing like What gives your life purpose? What makes you feel like you? What sort of light can you develop and find in the darkness? Having boundaries can be very difficult here, and creating like a shield or a boundary or something energetic to keep the senses and emotions like to yourself, keep other people's to themselves. There's absolutely a time and place for that, and that is a skill to develop when you have such a strong sensitivity that is that Neptune form of water, the vapor. It's so hard to tie down a vapor. You can't. It spreads and it combines with other things. It's very difficult to manage that sometimes, which is why these boundaries are so important. But do make sure that you're not just protecting yourself and keeping things or people or circumstances that could otherwise actually be very helpful away. And this energy can also be very isolating. This can be emotionally isolating, like feeling like nobody understands you, or literally isolating, feeling very alone or like you have no support. But when we are faced with circumstances like this, we have to turn inwards. We have to develop our relationship with ourselves, with our sense of who we are, our higher self, and our connection to everything, our connection with our pain. I really like that idea actually of like personifying pain and speaking to it as if it's something that can have a conversation with you. That's something that I just thought of, but I'm gonna start using that. But ultimately, I don't want you to think that I'm downplaying your pain. Like, if you're listening to this and you've gotten this far, I greatly appreciate you listening to this message, because it's an incredibly hard one to hear and even harder to like accept and utilize. But this is your power, and your perception within your reality is ultimately the thing that you have the most control over. And even if it seems like there is no positive choice, neutrality, acceptance that things are the way they are, you don't have to like them. You don't have to welcome them. It's just about not actively feeding into them as like you are a bad thing. I want you to stay away, because the more we focus on things that we don't want, the more they tend to come, because we're still keeping it in our energy. Whether we like something or not, our positive relationships with things aren't the only important energetic relationships. Just like think of anything that is a frequent source of irritation for you. When it happens, do you think, oh, that happened again, I noted, fine, whatever, and then you don't think about it anymore? Or are you like, that thing happened again, this is horrible, I hate it? Like, feeding that energy into it, even if you're verbally saying, I don't want this, I don't like it, I want it to go away, that's not the nature of reality to listen to your actual words. It's your energy. If you are putting a lot of energy into something, it emphasizes it within your life. So focusing on what you do want, having a perspective that mostly looks at things as positive or neutral. If you can be as neutral as you possibly can about those things that you hate, shift from hate to neutrality, I promise you it's such an incredibly powerful thing that is not easy, but it feels so satisfying to actually go over that hurdle and change your relationship with something. And it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. It doesn't necessarily stick the first time. It's something that takes discipline, it takes effort, but it's possible. I know this for a fact. I have transformed my relationship with my perception of certain irritating things, certain painful things, and then they no longer bother me. And the crazy thing about it is that they tend to fade away. They tend to not be present in my reality anymore. And of course, your circumstances are going to differ. If it's something that is much more deeply ingrained in your reality, it's not just necessarily going to fade away, but all the more reason to have a neutral attitude towards something that is ever present that you don't like. I promise your suffering is here for a very specific purpose, and your relationship with it can be transformed. So I'm gonna stop it here because I feel like I've said what I needed to say, but I want you to know that I love and care about you and your soul. I want everyone to feel as comfortable and happy and just as much themselves as they possibly can. That's why I'm doing this. I want you to find your power and your purpose and your sense of who you are so that you can be this guiding light in the world that you're meant to be. But it takes understanding pain in order to be able to sympathize and empathize with the pain of others. Only those who have truly suffered can understand enough from that perspective to truly be able to make a difference and connect to those people who need you. I really hope that I've explained this in a way that makes sense and that is actually truly helpful, because my own personal understanding of this, I know how difficult it is, and I know how hard it can be to receive this message personally. But I want you to understand that you are so much more powerful than you might give yourself credit for. And you do have the greatest potential. It just takes clearing out those things that are keeping you from it. So thank you so much for listening. And thank you for being here with me through this Chiron journey. Chiron it's a really intense energy. And this placement obviously can manifest in so many different ways, but it's been very enlightening for me personally to look at things through that perspective, because it really gives life more purpose. It makes me want to believe that the suffering that we experience is here for a reason. Because if not, then, I mean, what's the point? I am an optimist. I'm an extreme optimist, and I always will be. Thank you. Thank you so much. Truly, I love every one of your souls, and we are all in this together. Thank you. Bye.